So it's about 6:30. So it's a Sunday morning. It's the coming up to the end of November now, and it's autumn, dark, rainy, not very cold morning, but this is about the time I would have been doing my paper round in the mid 1980s, where I deliver papers to houses around the upper part of Hampstead. That's where my newsagent was. So this is the sort of environment I remember as a young teenage boy. I think I was about 14, I think, and it's very dark, no one around. Still today, no one around. No one's crazy enough to get up at this time. But I wanted to walk up the road to where I did my paper round, and there was about three houses, I think, that on the road, just up the road from here. So we're in this is northwest London. We're in Hampstead, along the path here. At the end you can see the street ahead. That's Devonshire Hill. So this area is called Southend Green. So it's it's an old area, and this is that's the old name for it as well, Southend Green. I think there was like a pond that was well known even in the 1400s from here. So there's been houses around here, but we're walking towards Devonshire Hill. That's quite new. That was built in the early 1800s. There's quite a lot of speculation. There's quite a lot of speculation and building villas in this area and down by Kentish Town for the rich. But in the end, I don't think they really fancied it, really, especially Kentish Town. So, but this area has had some lovely houses along here. There's the Freemasons pub, which was built pretty much the same time, like 1820s. I think the church on the left is from that period as well. So they're very big. A lot of the houses, especially on the right hand side, very big Regency, original Regency houses. Of course, like not all of the houses survived, but the one we're going to have a look at was one of the original old houses. And it's a very nice street. You've got if you go around the corner on the left, that takes you down to Keats Grove and Keats House. Those houses are older, so this area on the left hand side, the houses go back to the 1800s. So just going to walk along here. It's a lovely area around here. So as I said, I delivered papers to about 3 houses on this street, some on the main road, and I think that was pretty much it. That was pretty much. I don't remember having a large paper round to do. I think it was just from the top of Hampstead down the high street, a couple of streets off of on either side, and I think Devonshire Hill was my last one. I think that's why it's memorable. I mean, it was particularly memorable because of the house number 9 Devonshire Hill. That's where we're going today, because this is in the mid 80s. It was this there was a very eccentric guy who lived there. My dad knew who he was because he'd told me that he was this artist, but I don't know if he was. I think he was a writer actually. But my dad said he was like this sort of eccentric artist whose parents had recently died, and he was had the place to himself, and he was. My dad had seen him driving around on his motorbike, driving up Hampstead High Street on his motorbike. But I'd never met the man. I didn't know who he was. It was a spooky house because it was completely overgrown. So when you went to deliver the papers, you go into this very dark, overgrown area. So like in the centre, when you go in the gate, there was big bushes that were overgrown, so it sort of blanketed out the any lights, and you'd have to make your way around the side to the front door. And again, it was all sort of like it was an overgrown forest, really, and to deliver the paper. So it was quite a spooky experience. I think luckily I only had to do it. I think it was on a Sunday. I used to deliver the paper Saturday and Sunday, but I think here it was only on the Sunday. So that was my paper round in the 1980s, the mid-1980s. It was for a short time. I think it was only for about 3 months over the I think October, November and December. This Devonshire Hill number 9 was very memorable, just because it was just it was a spooky place to deliver papers. But it wasn't until about 25 years later, I think. So it was about 2014. I was working in Hong Kong, and I just saw in the paper that the owner, Allan Chappelow, Allan Gordon Chappelow, and I read in the paper that he'd been murdered and a Chinese man had been arrested. It was just so bizarre. So let me read what the Guardian wrote about this. So this was an article written by Duncan Campbell, who was the Guardian's crime correspondent, and Richard Norton Taylor, who was its defence and security journalist. And these are really well-known, really well-respected journalists. But this is what they wrote about the affair in 2014. It is, according to the estate agents, probably the most valuable plot of land with planning permission to come to the market for sale in Hampstead Village ever. The Regency-style house, now being constructed, will provide, behind its electric gates, a cinema, swimming pool, gymnasium, and the future owner of this £7 million property will be living, we learn, where Constable and Keats too found inspiration. What the estate agents do not mention is that on this very plot, more than 7 years ago, a murder took place with links to the British government, Chairman Mao, and George Bernard Shaw. A killing which was then followed by the first murder trial in Britain, in which most of the evidence was heard in secret, with the media barred from entering the court. So when you've got Duncan Campbell and Richard Norton Taylor writing that, you'd take it seriously. But the local newspaper, the Camden New Journal, had been addressing these issues as well for a long time. Chappelow was a recluse, and according to the media, a millionaire. So he was found murdered in his house after a sum of money was discovered to have gone missing from his bank account. So in October 2006, an asylum seeker, a Chinese asylum seeker called Wang Yam, who was also a resident in Hampstead, was arrested in Switzerland and now in 2014 the Guardian also reported that Wang, who'd been accused of the murder, was a Chinese dissident whose grandfather had been Chairman Mao's third in command, while his father had been a Red Army general. And Wang had been a research assistant in the Chinese Nuclear Weapons Research Institute from 1984 to 1987, and had also been an associate professor at a university in Beijing. He claimed to have been involved in demonstrations in Tiananmen Square, and supposedly fearful of reprisals, left the country and went via Hong Kong to London, where he was quickly given refugee status. So he'd worked initially as a researcher at Imperial College, and he had his own computer company, which folded in 1999. So, as I said, he came to the attention of the police who were investigating the murder because he was using stolen credit cards that were traced to him. So Wang had recently left the country for Switzerland, and then he was arrested there. He was charged with the murder, burglary, and receiving, stolen goods. Now, what the Guardian just kept finding was they weren't allowed to follow the trial. The journalists. It was the trial was set in camera, so it meant no. Basically, it was top secret. No one was allowed to join it or report on it. So again, that's something for the government. The QC James Eady said the order was made to protect the public interest and the interests of justice. There will be a serious risk of harm in the disclosure of this information. So it's just really weird, isn't it? It's a very strange situation. Someone's been murdered, someone else has been arrested for the murder. There's all top secret. This person has got a really complicated past. He's involved with MI5 and the and then in the Camden New Journal again there was reports of neighbours. So for example, there was a court of appeal where they were considering evidence. There were fresh witnesses. So neighbours who had read in the Camden New Journal about Wang Yam's claims that he was innocent, contacted the police and saying about how. So, for example, one of the Devonshire Hill neighbours, Jonathan Bean. This was months after Mr. Chappellow's murder. He caught an intruder standing outside his door. So the intruder, he could hear lots of noise outside his door, and it was this man rifling through his postbox, and the man had a knife, and basically told him to get back inside and threatened to kill him, Mr. Bean, and his family if he called the police. And there was another man who was seen by a postman with some planks of wood in the gardens there, and was asking about getting access to the, like delivering about letters. So some odd things, connected to the case after the murder. The main suspect, or the only suspect in the case, Yam, was sentenced to life imprisonment. So in 2009, Wang Yam was sentenced to life imprisonment after a retrial at the Old Bailey. But he said he claimed his conviction was unfair, as so many parts of his evidence were heard behind closed doors. So the Labour Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, had issued a gagging order. So no one, on the grounds of interests of national security. And a lot of people have felt that there was some suspicion about the entire case, about the prosecution itself, and about whether Wang Yam was guilty or not. So a very strange situation here. Very very unclear what was going on. So if you have a look on online, they're saying Wang Yam was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years. He was consistently protesting his innocence, and was denied an appeal at the European Court of Human Rights. But I think the amount of secrecy surrounding it just brings up so many questions. And there's a journalist called Thomas Harding, who's wrote an award-winning book called Blood on the Page about the whole case as well. And of course you can see online there's still all the old newspaper articles about it. So very strange. So there are three motives or three situations here that I can see. Okay, the first one, which is what the British government say, is that a Chinese immigrant called Wang Yam broke into Mr. Chappellow's house, stole his credit cards, killed the 86-year-old man, and then fled to Switzerland, where he was caught and arrested and prosecuted and is now in prison. So that's that. It's a very, very odd situation. But that's the government line. The second one is that there was some sort of, government cock-up. I think some sort of secret MI5 cock-up. And that's what I believe. I believe that because everything seems so messy. There's all these people hanging around the area who seem to have authority. Like the neighbour saying this guy, rifling through his post box and then threatening to kill him and his family. It's like it's odd. And right next door to Mr. Chappellow's house. So and everything about the government, the way they dealt with the situation, the suspicions people have. So I'm not sure. I don't know why there was this cock-up, why this happened, but Wang Yam just seems to have some deeper connection, it feels to me. And the third one is another man who and the third motive could have been or the third reason for Mr. Chappellow's murder was that there was a man called Peter Hall who had been one of Mr. Chappellow's lovers on Hampstead Heath, and he had contacted the police to say that Mr. Chappelow had taken men back to his home, and it could have been he'd picked up the wrong person, and this was some crazy guy who unfortunately murdered him. But this one, the police failed to follow up on that one. So, I mean, that's a possibility. I think out of the three, the first one seems the most odd, just because of how much, the government have tried to protect itself, not allow people to follow the case. This Chinese man just seems to have a lot of history connected to him, and it seems odd that he just not broke down the door and nicked a credit card and murdered him and ran away. So I don't know, but very very interesting, just very interesting, odd mystery that still seems to be there.